Greetings and welcome to Bring It On. Happy New Year, by the way, because this is our first Bring It On for the new year. My name is Bob Hayes, and I'm going to be your host for today, and I'm delighted to have the host of Crosstalk, Mr. Kevin Tocci, a well-known radio spokesperson and a well-known host of Crosstalk. And Kevin and I also do another show called Municipal Focus, and we do that together. Kevin, how are you?
Happy New Year. How were your holidays?
It's good, and you?
It's pretty good. Can't complain.
Awesome. Today we're going to have a little discussion about local politics, and we're probably going to drift into some state politics, and we might even get to some national politics if time prevails. And also we're going to talk a little bit, if we have some time, about the affluenza teenager and his missteps along the way. So Kev, let's start locally. What do we have for local races coming up? Cutler, Deal,
You have a couple of
Kennedy.
Well, no Kennedy. You, of course, don't forget Mike Brady.
Kennedy seat, that's what I meant.
Kennedy seat. Mike Brady was successful in November in winning that seat. The trick to winning the seat is now he's got a year to be reelected for another 2 years. So he'll be back out there. You'll see him knocking on doors and doing his fundraisers probably in the next couple of months to solidify his position being the state senator for this particular district.
That seat appears to be a little controversial. As you know, Deal won all the little towns that surround the city of Brockton. And then Brady kind of landslided the city of Brockton and held that seat. And the seat is a difficult seat to take over because, as we both know, there was a legend who held that seat. I mean, Tom Kennedy was just a guy that did a fabulous job. He was a man of the people,
Yep.
and Mike Brady has said that, and a tremendous amount of other politicians have said it's a tough seat to fill. They're big shoes. He was a great guy. Everybody loved him, and like you said, he's in for a year. Who do you think runs against him? Is Deal going again? You know, it's a tough one when you win all the little towns and you lose the city, and he's a city guy. What do you do? How do you beat that?
I think he's first and foremost, Jeff Deal would be the viable Republican, I think, who would take him on. The one you had kind of mentioned as far as controversy, there was a little bit of a controversy back in November because what had happened was that the city of Brockton was having their city elections. The city of Brockton every 2 years holds their elections to re-elect their school committee, their city councilors, and their mayor. And it seemed awfully funny that the election was held to fill Kennedy's seat was held, so to speak, a month after the primary. And it's kind of different. It's difficult in regards to, I could see why the city of Brockton did it. Of course, first and foremost, Brockton is a Democratic stronghold. Everybody knows it. It's an urban center, and that's where, I mean, you find a bulk of your Democrats. A lot of times in your rural areas where you'll find more of your conservatives. And a lot of folks are like, if this was a regular election, just like every other community that is in the district, did not have any other elections. They got out and they voted. But Brockton kind of had that extra oomph because there were other people to select in the ballot. So it kind of helped bump up the number of voters who got out there.
Well, you used the term, it's kind of funny that the election went the way it went, and other people have used the term, it's kind of convenient that it went that way. And both of those terms probably apply. But also, sticking up for the city of Brockton, it probably costs a lot to run an election that you have to do to run a special election. So having it run at the same time probably had some factor into it. And again, I'm not sticking up for anyone. I'm just saying the facts are the facts are the facts. Everything is money driven today with budgets being shot, and it just seemed like the right thing to do. So I can't say that I totally agree or disagree, but it happened.
If I may, and I'm somebody who, you know, for the local radio station, I do coverage for the city of Brockton, and it's a different setup as to how the voting goes. You look at Whitman, or you look at Hanson, and all the voting is done in one central place. It's not like that in Brockton. Brockton, you have, there are 28 separate precincts. There are 4 precincts in every ward. You have 7 wards. And it's a matter of you got to take all of those tapes, bring them to City Hall, and have them tabulated. Usually, it isn't a matter of having a small group of volunteers. Usually, on election night, you have a larger group of volunteers, but then you have folks from the Brockton Police Department who are on detail, who will bring all of the voting information and all the voting stuff back to City Hall for them to be able to. It's a much bigger operation than in the smaller communities. So I can see why they were more willing to try to have it be condensed than to have it on two separate times.
Well, if you think of it, I've heard the number of $5,000 to $6,000 it costs in the town of Hanson or the town of Whitman to run a special election. So if you have 7 different precincts that you're 7 different wards that you're going to run it in, do the math. It could be $42,000 to $50,000 for all the people to do it. So it probably made sense to button it up the same way. But I think it will have some impact maybe in a different manner when it's done next time, on its own.
Sure, and if I could kind of add in now, Mike Brady had gone from being a state representative. He was the rep for the 9th Plymouth District,
yep,
which is kind of a small part of Brockton. It's all in Brockton, unlike the 9th and the 11th, which is part of Brockton and parts of other communities like East Bridgewater, West Bridgewater, or Easton. So with Mike ascending to being a state senator, now his seat is open. Brockton now is going to have 2 more elections in order to fill that seat just until this November. So it's like, so I could see why they would want to try to have it, more of utilizing other elections. And they're actually going to do that. Actually, February 2nd, they will have the primary, but it's going to be a standalone primary. But when they have the presidential primary on March 1st, that will be also the general election for that state rep seat. So they're kind of using that in conjunction. Again, it's a cost savings, and it makes sense to, so you're not doing it more than you have to.
Yeah, doing a repetitious motion, it's going to save some money.
Cut down on the redundancies.
All right. Now, we're talking about, we're not quite sure who might be running against Mike Brady, but you mentioned Jeff Deal, but Jeff also has a race coming up if he wants to hold his rep seat, and so does Josh Cutler. Opponents, what are you thinking?
I don't know. It'll be interesting to see what happens with both of them. Both have been highly successful over the, first and foremost, attaining the seat and then holding on to it. If I'm correct, 2 years ago, Josh Cutler was successful in winning each community, I believe, if I'm correct, and you might know as well.
Yes, he did.
He was able to, and then that was the second time he did. When he was initially elected, he won all 3 communities.
Right. Being
reelected, he won all 3 communities. I think any opponent that is going to take on Josh has to realize what kind of prowess. He's a very active guy. He's not a guy who disappears. You know who he is. He's in each community and does a lot of stuff. And he also uses social media to his advantage. Same with Jeff Deal. I think Jeff Deal, because of how vocal he has been as a Republican in the House, and some of the things, let's not forget, he had the gas tax initiative that he was able to spearhead. They saw it as David versus Goliath, and they were able to have that gas tax repealed. So it's definitely interesting that 2 years ago Jeff Deal did not have an opponent. There wasn't a Democrat that was willing to say, I'm going to take this guy on, knowing how powerful this guy is and how successful he has been as an elected official, as a caring elected official.
Well, I think all of that's going to definitely play into the up-and-coming races, but I mean, you've also probably, I'm assuming, in Whitman and Hanson, there are both. I know Hanson, I think Kenny Mitchell is up for re-election to the Board of Selectmen. I believe he's the only one. He's a standalone, and I'm not quite sure who's up in Whitman.
I'm not sure either. I don't know if it's Brian Bezanson or if it might be Lisa Green. I'm not sure. I'd have to look. Although I think Lisa is would be on the same ballot as Carl Kowalski. So I'd have to take a look and see exactly which one would be up. But it'd be interesting to see who would be up and see if there would be any challenges. I don't think there were any challenges last year for those who were seeking re-election. I think it was Danny Salvucci, your pal.
I think it was too. I think Danny was up. Also, there's going to be some changes. I mean, not changes. There's going to be some seats available for school committee. There's going to, I believe there's 2 in Whitman and 2 in Hanson, both coming up for re-election. And again, so that's going to change some of the format of the committees around town if anybody runs against them. And as always, we urge people to come out and run for office. These people are all volunteers, including myself, that run for these offices. And they do it on a voluntary basis. So anybody who thinks that they want to, come on out and run. It's a good thing to get involved with local government. I mean, Kevin and I talk about it on different shows and how much is put into it and how much I know that both Cutler and Deal run these unbelievable election campaigns which take a lot. But at a lower level, lots of times it's a little bit easier to run unless you have a lot of candidates. And everybody puts their best foot forward, and I applaud all candidates, win, lose, or draw. It's good to have people come out and run. So it is what it is. Moving on, because as always, we're moving right along with this. I promised that we'd talk about this affluenza kid. What's the story with that? What 48-year-old mother? I mean, this kid, in my opinion, gets a break. He gets into a horrific car accident. He makes a really bad decision, gets into a car accident, goes to court. The lawyers drum up this affluenza type defense, and they win. And he's 16 years old, and they tell him as a part of his probation and all of the above that he has to check in with a probation officer, and he has to abstain from the use of alcohol. And then allegedly, right before he doesn't check in, there's a video that surfaces, shows him at a party. It looks like they're playing beer pong, so it said in the newspaper when they released it. And then the young man and his mother disappear. He's 18, facing maybe, depending on whether they try him again as a juvenile, he could do as little as 4 months or as much as 10 years in jail.
Sure.
And I believe some people died in this accident, and some other people are still have some serious injuries from all of this. And then his mom takes him to a resort
in Mexico. Right.
What's up with that, Kevin? Give me your thoughts.
I just think it's crazy. You look at our society and what it's slowly devolving to. First and foremost, in today's day and age, where someone can just pull out their phone and videotape, I think it was an unwise choice on his part. If he in fact is guilty of breaking his probation and indulging in alcohol, there they have the evidence right there. I mean, that's going to be proof in the pudding. How are they going to have catch lightning in a bottle a second time as a defense to say, oh well, all you could do is just question what was in the cups. But you have to ask yourself, when do we lay the blame at the feet of not only individuals but parents as well for a lot of the behavior we're seeing in America these days?
Well, I also think, Kevin, there's been a lot of discussion, and I certainly am not forming an opinion, but I do believe that drug dealers get caught on the street, and I'm going to do a show on the opioid addiction and all of how that comes up very, very soon, ladies and gentlemen, so please stay tuned. But drug dealers are getting $5,000 and $10,000 bail, and they're holding the mother on $1 million bail for a charge of, hindering apprehension. It seems a little bit, I'm listening to the lawyers on both sides of this case, and it seems like $1 million bail might seem excessive. Yes, taking away her passport, but they don't do that to drug dealers, and maybe they should. I mean, I'm all for that. We need stricter penalties. But this whole case is bizarro. It's really, really crazy.
I think you look at the justice system and there's no consistency. That's the biggest problem is that there's no consistency as to when somebody's apprehended, if you're going to hold them, and, does the punishment fit any crime that has been committed and found guilty by, a jury of their peers.
Well, that's the whole thing. I mean, I just, talking about juries, I just did jury duty. Went over to the Brockton Courthouse, You get in there, you hang out, you watch a movie.
Good times over there.
They get determining whether you're going to be put on a case, and after you do, they go up, and we had about 70 jurors, and they start impaneling a jury. Yeah. And this particular case seemed, not trivial, but middle of the road. And I'm sitting there waiting to be interviewed, and I'm looking, it's just my nature, and I'm looking and saying, how much is it costing to try this individual? And when I look around at the court offices, the judges, the prosecutors, the lawyers, the people that they're impaneling the jury, and not even counting the cost of the building, it's in the thousands of dollars an hour. And the judge says this case is going to take 3 to 4 days. It was a gun charge. And I'm like, 3 to 4 days on this particular one charge case, not saying that it's incidental, because it's a serious thing. Sure. 3 to 4 days at thousands of dollars an hour. Some might question why it costs so much and why there's such delays in the court system. And this isn't counting. They said there was going to be several police officers. There was going to be all kinds of different stuff going on. I'm amazed at how that works. I really am. What's your thoughts?
My thoughts is it's the system. And I don't know if there's a way to streamline the system. And let's not forget, I mean, lawyers have to eat too.
Oh, I'm not
and I mean, and a lot of times, it's the justice system, and you have attorneys who are out there, and whether it's right or wrong to defend somebody or try to get them off on a charge, especially if there's enough evidence to support the fact that, in fact, the individual was caught, in fact, possessing a gun or using a gun, dealing drugs, or what have you. It's the right of due process, and I think that's what our country is founded on, is those particular rights. It just so happens that it's such a drawn-out process. And let's not forget, once if this individual is found to be guilty and is sentenced, it's not over there, is it?
Oh, you can appeal.
You can appeal. And on top of that, you and I as taxpayers will pay for his incarceration and all that is entailed in keeping him within the system to rehabilitate him or her.
Well, how this conversation came about is, we get on the affluenza team. Yep. in that type of defense, but it goes right back to what I'm listening to these two sets of lawyers last night talking about it on TV.
That's got to be a good time right there.
And they're talking about the $1 million bail. This charge this woman got isn't as bad as a lot of charges that you see. $30,000 bail, $20,000 bail. Sure. This woman got $1 million bail, and a couple of them were saying the only reason is because it's getting so much publicity.
You think that's why?
I really don't know, because I believe in the judicial system. I'm not picking on it whatsoever. I'm saying the judges, the court officers, the lawyers are in a sticky place.
Is it a matter of sending a message? I mean, this is a parent. I think we expect parents to know better. And you know what? This is somebody who, found a way to get her son out of the country. And look at all that it took to get them back into the country. I think it was a message. I think that's why it was so high. It was a message. She fled, and they had to be brought back to justice. So you want to get out? Well, it's going to cost you.
Well, I somewhat agree with. I'm not disagreeing with the $1 million bail. Not at all, because I think...
No, but it should be something that's across the board.
Exactly.
Right.
In other words, there needs to be more of a chart, so it's not on the discretionary value.
Sliding scale, maybe?
Yeah, or of some sort of thing. And also, they got her right back, but he's still there.
Yeah.
I mean, isn't that amazing? And they say it could take months to get him back. That almost just doesn't seem right.
Well, is it a governmental thing? I mean, is he in custody with the Mexican government right now? It's a matter of him signing his extradition in order to be brought back to the country? Is it anything like that?
Well, he's fighting extradition. He's saying that, they're violating his rights.
Right there, then.
But he's not a Mexican citizen. He's a U.S. citizen.
Right.
And that's what he's saying. And from reading into it, it's kind of crazy. But it'll be interesting to see
how it plays out.
Yeah, how that plays out and where they're going to go with it. But it's part of the system. And I'm sure, ladies and gentlemen, tremendous amount of people are watching it and going to be interested in the outcome, because it's a talking point. It really is a talking point, and a lot of people are not happy with this affluenza. I mean, it just doesn't seem. How do you do that?
But what's even better is that this will be a court case that will be looked back upon. I mean, that's how our justice system is. And that's how lawyers fight cases. This is looking at past cases,
right?
And what the decisions and what the fight was in it, and how they plot out their fight to defend their particular client.
Well, that under those terms and conditions that you just brought up, I think we're going to see the affluenza defense happening more than once.
Right.
Now, how do they judge it? Their parents are millionaires, or their parents are not millionaires? I mean, it gets really. I just think that some of that stuff, and again, I'm not picking on attorneys. I respect the court system. I respect the attorneys, and most of all, I respect the police office for the simple reason of they've got this down in the trenches job of dealing with the criminals. They just bring them in. These guys do the rest.
Well, funny enough is this will help Donald Trump with his argument, not so much with keeping the immigrants from Mexico coming in, but also keeping our citizens in. You're going to build a wall. It's going to be great. That's what he's going to do.
And Mexico's paying. Don't forget to throw that in.
They're going to build it. It's going to be a great wall.
And make America great again. Is that what the wall is going to do?
I don't know.
I knew you were going to drag us down that road, though, into presidential politics. So I'm okay with that, though.
But it's what you're talking about, looking at a situation and you scratch your head. How is this happening? You talk about $1 million for the affluenza mother. You're talking about a guy like Donald Trump, who is, if you look at social media, if you look at what's in the media itself, people are saying, how is this guy saying the things that he's been saying over and over and over again, still leading the polls? Now we don't have voting results to coincide with the polls. The polls aren't always right, but he has been leading the polls up to this point. People are like going, how is that possible? So you scratch your head and go, how is this possible? How is he saying what he's saying, getting away with it, and still being someone who is a front runner who could end up running our country for the next 4 years if he's successful after the primaries are in place, and we find out the Republicans say, okay, well, you will be our nominee to lead the Republicans into the race for the presidency.
Well, I think that all politicians should take heed of the fact that the Republicans are sick of business as usual. The Democrats are sick as business as usual.
America
is sick. I was getting there. Independents are sick as business as usual.
No.
America.
You're incorrect by saying independents.
Well, I understand.
Unenrolled.
Okay, unenrolled are sick of business as usual. And the American people are sending a message to the politicians, whether they elect Trump or who they elect. I'm not getting into that with you. But they're telling these people, we're tired of hearing we're going to do this and hearing we're going to do that. Yeah. Again, it's easy to pick on presidents. I'm going way back into the Kennedy years, where there's been tons of presidents and they all come in and they make a statement. And again, I don't care if they're Democrats or Republicans. I'm not picking on either side. I'm saying in general, nothing's getting done. People are tired of it, and they should take heed maybe about what he's saying and how he's saying it, that people are following it. Yeah. It's what a lot of people must be thinking.
There's been many a conversation, no matter where I go, whether I'm going to the Stop and Shop up the street, or if I'm over at Shaw's in Hanson, if I am at one of the town halls or the radio station in Marshfield, everybody's talking about the whole fact of how Donald Trump is somehow tapping into the silent majority. It's something that a candidate has not yet been able to do. And if you look, and I think the other thing is when you look at the number of people who have announced, whether it's Republican or Democrat, is there an impressive person in the bunch? A lot of times, people will say no. You've got retreads, and you have people who just, you look at them and you go, I don't see them leading our country for the next 4 to 8 years.
Well, let me just say this. Whoever gets elected to lead this country for the next 4 or 8 years is most certainly going to have their hands full, because we have several problems on our hands that are difficult problems nationally and internationally.
Globally, yeah.
And, globally, and then it boils right down to the local towns and communities. I mean, municipalities and locals are falling apart. School departments are feeling the effect. State-run things are feeling the effect. I mean, look at the T. There's a bunch of things that are feeling the effect, and everybody thinks that, oh, it's Big Brother, it's federal government, it starts there. But isn't it truthfully, and I hear this lots myself, people say, well, you'll hear people at a local level saying, well, the state's going to take care of it, the Fed's going to take care of that. The state and the Fed are the voters, and the municipality. They are all of us, you, me, anyone that's registered to vote in this great United States. Is the federal government, is the state government. That's all of us. That's our responsibility. That's why we vote. So, I mean, don't you think that has a little bit of bearing, a little bit of weight on what's going to happen in the next 4 years? Because God knows this is not going to be easy for an incoming president.
It's not going to be easy, and the other thing is how do you unite our country? I don't know if Barack Obama is the guy who has united this country. I don't know if he's done that. I feel that this country is more divided than ever. And I think the whole idea when he was elected 8 years ago, well, 7 years ago, was they saw him as a uniting factor. And I don't think he has been that. For some of the good that he's done, there are some things that he's done that have been very questionable that you wouldn't see, that you wouldn't normally see from a presidency. And it'll be interesting to see what ends up happening for the final year of his term, and to see how, whoever ends up being the nominees for the Democrats and the Republicans, how they are going to try to either distance themselves or try to follow up with his policies.
I think that's a pretty difficult area to tread into. It's very difficult because you have both sides of the coin there. And as you know, as an elected official, it's impossible to please everyone.
That's right.
I mean, I think that a lot of it is they try to please the masses.
Yep.
And lots of times that doesn't work either. I mean, the gun control thing, the executive orders, there's been more executive orders in this presidency the last 4 years, 3 years, as you said, than has ever been considered before. So I think that's all going to play into it. But as usual, we're getting right down to the end of it. It was a quick half hour.
It was.
We touched on a lot of the subjects we talked about touching on. Kevin and I are going to be taking on, if hopefully we're trying to do this, a 2 or 3 part series on drug addiction and opioid problems and the heroin in all of these communities across the United States. We're going to feature that. We're going to have some guests on. So ladies and gentlemen, please stay tuned for that. And as always, if there's anything that you'd like to see on Bring It On, or you would like to be on a show, you can contact me at bobhayes4433@gmail.com, or you can call me on my cell phone at 617-538-0189. And Kevin, the same way. Kevin does this fabulous show called Crosstalk. He does a lot of very similar things, and we want your opinion. So, Kevin, how do they get a hold of you?
It's easy to do so. 781-447-4175. That's right here to our studios here in Whitman, 115 South Avenue, or WHCA television at gmail.com is the easiest way.
And again, thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for watching Bring It On. I keep talking about Crosstalk. Thank you for watching Crosstalk, and we'll see you again. Stay tuned.